Hey, what's up, guys? How you doing? Hope you're having a great Monday. Hope you had a great weekend. And yeah, it's been a while. Huh? It's been a couple weeks, maybe 2, 3 weeks. I can't keep track. All the days are kind of blurring together right now. I'm in newborn baby mode, so everything's a little crazy. But wanted to get on here and do a show, and we'll try to go long today. All right, we've got I've got approved for my wife up to 2 hours. So if we get some calls and we get some good phone calls today, we'll let it rip and we'll hang out for a while. This will probably be my last post of the year. Perhaps we've got two fight big events coming up on the 23rd and the 26th. So perhaps I'll get live and I'll come on live and do something after all that real quick, at the end of the year. But in case I don't, I just want to preface, this might be the last show of the year. So TNC 365 wrapping up the year that was in boxing for 2023, although it's not over yet. We have some stuff to look forward to. And of course, we'll talk about that in some other things. A lot of other things, and maybe we'll have some guests join us. It's going to be fun. It's going to be great. And phone lines are open. We're going to let it rip and have some fun. Let's see. We're live right now on YouTube, X, and Facebook. Hopefully you guys are going to be loud and clear. There's not too much buffering. We've had some issues with that in the past, but I think we got it worked out. You know how it is with technology. You got to kind of learn as you go. Anyway, let's jump right into this, man. We'll jump right in. And again, if calls pop up, guests pop up, we'll take that as it comes. But for right now, let's jump right in. I want to start with this. Let me share my screen here. All right, you guys have seen this, right? Claressa Shields gets dropped in sparring. This was like the biggest item on X last week. This was all over the place. And look, you guys know I talk all the time about sparring and how it's really insignificant, like stuff like this, because I've literally seen world-class fighters, like Hall of Fame level guys, get their ass whooped in sparring. And then 6-7 weeks later, look amazing on fight night. So it's really all about what you do on fight night. You have off days in sparring. I don't know the context because this is obviously an extremely short clip, but it does. Look, Claressa Shields, I tweeted this last week. She is her own worst enemy. I really don't care that she was dropped in sparring. To me, it's more embarrassing for her that this shot landed so flush and she didn't even see it. She bit on a feint on that throwaway right hand and then got nailed with a clean left hook. And this dude wasn't even punching hard. He didn't even turn over on it. He just slapped her with it. So it's not even that she got dropped. It's that he landed that so easily. Right. And it just goes to show that, guys, biology matters. There's a huge difference between men and women. I shouldn't even have to get into that. I'm not even going to do it. But Claressa has gone around for years comparing herself to male boxers, saying she's more accomplished than any male boxers because she's unified all these titles and all these divisions. And I've clarified that for you guys. I've stated numerous times. Now a bunch of other channels quote me. They don't give me credit, but they quote the original guy who said all this stuff. It was me. That in the three divisions she competed in and cleaned out, there were about 100 total pro fighters globally. Okay, this is just licensed pro fighters, about 100. So Claressa is the best out of 100. Okay, that's good. That's cool. All right. But nuance matters. And if you say, hey, man, I'm the tallest guy in this classroom, there's a class of 30 people and I'm the tallest guy in this classroom, I might be like, yeah, but it's a classroom of midgets. You're 4'3". So yeah, you're the tallest guy in that classroom, but compared to the average person walking down the street, you're still a midget. So context matters and nuance matters. And yes, Claressa is very, very accomplished in her 3 weight classes. She's the best out of 100 fighters. Okay. To compare that to what men have done in this sport for centuries it's ridiculous. And then she called out Gennady Golovkin. She called out Keith Thurman. She posted a clip, and Mike Benson, of course, retweeted it. A bunch of clips of her landing hard shots on guys in sparring. And she said, I hurt these guys. None of them were hurt. But dude, Claressa, stop trying so hard. And it's not, Claressa's just being Claressa. Okay. I ain't even mad at her. It's all the yes men around her and in the media and stuff who are just afraid to say it. Just say it. If she wants to live in this diluted state, great, but don't add to it. Don't enable it. You're helping a sick person. It'd be like being around an alcoholic and just sipping on a beer all day and kind of looking at them and smiling. Hey, what's up, man? And you just keep sipping a beer in front of an alcoholic. I mean, what are you doing? So that's just how I see this, man. I really don't care that she got dropped. I really don't. Sorry, my chair. Move my chair. There we go. I don't care that she got dropped, but it does when you've talked all that shit for all those years. Yeah, this is kind of funny. This is kind of funny. Okay, moving on. We're going to talk more about this card coming up this weekend later on in the show, but I wanted to just really quickly give a shout out to His Excellency over in Saudi Arabia. This Saturday, December 23rd, Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. There's going to be a great event that is a pay-per-view. And you guys know I've been very, very critical of pay-per-views. And because there's been just an oversaturation in the market of pay-per-views. But this is one that I am 100% buying. 100% buying. And I'm going to show you guys a couple things here. Shout out to my man, Jack Alter. He tweeted this earlier today. He said, this card goes insane. And he showed just the lineup here. So let me talk about this for a minute. And again, we can talk about it more later in the show. I'm sure a couple of you guys will call in. You'll want to talk about it. Here's what I love about this event. There's several things I love about it and why I am very publicly, openly supporting and promoting it. I think this is, it sets the example. It's a model for how other promoters should be doing it. Now, look, they're throwing a ton of money at this thing, and they're getting all these guys to fight that wouldn't normally fight because they're getting paid so well. I understand that money is a big reason why this is happening, but it sets a precedent where it's like, look, dude, I hope this thing's successful because there's so many great things about this card. Let's look at the lineup. None of those fights right there. There's what, 8 or 9 fights on this card. First of all, most pay-per-views you get, there's 4 fights and 3 of them suck. You're paying for the main event. In this card, none of these, 8 fights here that Jack listed, none of them are great fights. None of them are really fights we asked for, which is my biggest complaint about pay-per-view these days, right? It's a bunch of fights on here that are on the level of, let's say, Benavidez Plant, right? Some of them are even Benavidez Andrade-esque, or Tank Davis with most of his opponents. That's like the level of fight. But there's like 8 or 9 of them. And it's heavyweights. And there are several guys here that are fighting that are top 10 fighters, legitimate, proven, some of them top 5 fighters. In the case of Dimitri Bivol, he's a pound-for-pound level talent. We've got young up-and-coming heavyweights. We've got older guys on their way out, former title holders. And then there's also a possible build here because Anthony Joshua and Deontay Wilder are fighting. They're both in showcase matchups. I think that Joshua is matched pretty tough. I think Wilder's set up to look real good against Parker. But if they both win, they're going to fight early next year. We're finally going to get that fight. You know, although it's years past its due date, at least there's a build. So, like, I'm going to watch this. And the 2 top guys fighting on it, right? The co-main is Wilder. The main event's Joshua. If they win, they may fight early next year. So I love watching events that have a build to them. This sport lacks that so much. The WWE does such a better job at storytelling and building than boxing. And obviously the UFC does a better job. So this is an example of like, okay, cool. The 2 winners will fight each other next year. So there's a possible build here. I like that. Also, what's cool about this, it's going to be on in the afternoon because it's overseas in Saudi Arabia. It's going to start in the afternoon while I'm putting my daughter down, my oldest daughter down for her nap. She takes a nap in the afternoon every day now. And the baby will be feeding her and, you know, taking care of her. And I'm going to be chilling in the living room, pretty much, you know, watching my daughters play for the afternoon into the evening hours, taking care of them, playing with, you know, watching them play with their toys and stuff. And I'm going to have the boxing on. I'm going to have a few friends over. And I have family coming into town Friday for Christmas. We're all going to be watching together and drinking a few beers or maybe drinking some wine because we're probably going to be eating pasta. And it's going to be awesome. It's going to be awesome. On top of all of that, it's $40. So I'm getting all that for $40. So it's on at a reasonable time. I don't have to stay up till 2 in the morning. It's on during regular time when regular human beings are awake. And trust me, guys, I'm a night owl. I love to stay up late, but you can't when you have a newborn baby. You're up late anyway because you have to get up 2-3 times a night to feed the little thing. So the little monster and clean poop and puke and all that. So it's nice that I can watch this during the day like a regular human being. It's also nice that it's only $40. And yes, again, I'll repeat, none of these are great fights, but they're all decent fights. And there's 8 or 9 of them. And they feature names. So there's enough going on here, and it's reasonably priced to where hell yeah, I'm supporting this event. Take my money. This will be the only pay-per-view that I have bought in 2023. I have not paid a cent for any other pay-per-view. Several of the pay-per-views I never even watched. There's a couple that I watched, but they were on the Fire Stick. I'll admit it. They were on the Fire Stick. They weren't worth my money. They also, most of them weren't worth my time to even watch it live. I'm paying for this. And the promotion involved, there's multiple promoters involved in this. So it's not like I'm trying to stick up for a certain promoter or something. This is just a really good event. And here's a couple things I find funny about this. They announced this, what, 5 weeks ago, 6 weeks ago, something like that. It's funny because fighters these days always talk about, I need 3 months. I need 4 months. The promoters say, we need like 6 months to really build this thing up and make it a big pay-per-view. They announced this, I swear it was like 5 weeks ago, 6 weeks ago. Correct me if I'm wrong, guys. But everybody signed on for this, and they're all having a short camp. It's funny how you don't need 4 months to prepare when you're getting money thrown at you and you're part of a big event like this. It's kind of funny how that works. So yes, these are mostly showcase fights, stay busy kind of fights. There's a couple of step up fights here for the younger guys and stuff, but there's enough of these fights on one event. Instead of getting 3 crappy undercard fights and then a main event we didn't ask for, we're getting 8 or 9 fights. Let's be honest, guys. A lot of these fights on this card are PBC level pay-per-views. Let's just be honest. They are. Several of these fights. So a lot of these fights are better than what you're getting on regular DAZN or regular Showtime, any of that. So I'm a big fan of this thing, man. I'm definitely supporting it. And real quick, I want to show you one last thing on this. For those of you on audio, sorry, I apologize. You won't be able to see this, but the promo. How do you not get hype looking at that? You're like, man, this is going to be a fun day. So, dude, I'm excited for this event, and I'm definitely going to be checking it out. And real quick, well, we'll break down the actual fights later, I think. But oh man, look at this. My man Chris Singh with the super chat. That's an awesome super chat, brother. Thank you so much, my friend. He says, Merry Christmas, Mike. Please get the kids a toy from Sylvia and I. Cheers. Please tell Sylvia that Tiffany and I said hello. We would love to get down there to see you guys next year. In fact, Tiffany and I were just talking about that the other day. So please tell her thank you. And thank you, brother. Merry Christmas to you and yours. I really appreciate it. And we will definitely be seeing you guys soon. We want to come check out that area. We've been interested in it for a while. It might be the next step. I don't know if Atlanta is the final stop, so maybe that will be the next place we go to. So you guys could give us like the tour. All right. Thanks a lot, man. Dude, just amazing. Where's the applause button here? Thank you so much, brother. I appreciate it, man. I'm just going to leave that up. I'm just going to leave that up for the whole show. We're just going to leave that up because it's so awesome. Okay. What else here? Oh, I got to talk about this. How could I not start with this? Because everyone's been talking about this like they're getting some money from this deal. I don't know. It's funny. Whenever a new network deal is announced, there's this really funny visceral reaction in the boxing universe with fans these days because they're so tied to promoters and stuff. But all right, so PBC announces a deal on Amazon Prime. Okay, this really didn't come as a surprise to people because it had been rumored for weeks that Amazon was the top candidate to land a PBC deal. They were negotiating apparently with multiple platforms, multiple streaming services, to be clear, because none of the networks wanted to work with them. and they ultimately announced this deal with Amazon. So, okay, basically, we all got an email from the PBC's communications team. Everyone in the business got an email, and it laid out this carefully crafted press release that was very, very vague and brief, and just stated matter of factly, hey, we got a deal on Amazon. There is going to be pay-per-view fights and there will be non-pay-per-view fights. It did not specify how much will be pay-per-view versus non-pay-per-view. What I hear is that there will be about a dozen fights, fight cards a year, a dozen events. So basically a monthly show. And so, right off the top, I'm thinking, okay, well, how many of those 12, if there's about 12, how many of them will be pay-per-view? Well, 10 of them will basically be a monthly pay-per-view, but maybe once or twice a year, you get a special free show on regular Amazon Prime. Or will it be the reverse? Will most of these shows just be on Amazon Prime, and maybe once or twice a year, there's a big pay-per-view show? Will the pay-per-views be $80? Which is what you kind of have to charge on the networks because of the infrastructure, the way all of it works out with a network where they get a significant portion of that money. Now you're on a streaming service. Can you charge $40? Will you charge $40? Or are you going to keep charging $80? Now that you're off of that network and you don't have to give up as much of that money to the network, you have a little more freedom on a streaming service. It's cheaper to do production. Will you lower the price of pay-per-view? Also, PBC represents over 150 fighters. Are you going to be able to get all of them in the ring more than once a year if you only have 12 dates? Are you going to allow them to go over and fight on other platforms to stay busy and make some money for like little one-off deals and stuff? Are you guys going to be willing to, as part of this deal, are they going to be willing to work with other promoters and do cross-promotional fights? Again, will they allow guys to go to other platforms to make those big fights happen, or will they force everyone to come over to their platform, right? So these are all questions that I have. These are big, big questions. Also, is this for the United States only? What about international distributing, right? So with Showtime Boxing, that's an American network, and PBC was on Showtime here in America. And even though they were dissing streaming apps and calling DAZN dead zone and dissing it and saying we'll never go fight on an app, all of their international broadcasting was done through DAZN recently. Kind of ironic. So what about with Amazon? Is it going to be globally, or are you going to be doing international stuff on other platforms? Like, there's no details with this press release. And so, of course, nobody in the media pushed for information, for details. Nobody wanted to do investigative journalism, right? And we don't know the answers to those questions. I just hope as a consumer, as a fan, that we get answers to some of those questions in the coming weeks and months. Don't have to do it right now. It's the end of the year. Things are slowing down. I get it. I think they said the first card will be like February, March, maybe somewhere. Maybe it's February, if I remember correctly. Don't quote me, guys, but somewhere in the first quarter of 24. We need to know the answers to these questions before that inaugural event. We need to know how many of these events are going to be pay-per-view, what kind of price structure, is this global, what's with the international stuff, like how are we doing all of this, right? So that's what I hope happens. Now, let me state this. I hope, my hope is that PBC has learned from some of their mistakes and some of the issues they've had on different networks and not being able to build up a dedicated subscribership and build ratings. I hope they've learned from a lot of those things and they apply those lessons learned to this deal with Amazon. I hope to see PBC fighters, particularly their higher level guys, fight 2 or 3 times a year consistently. I hope that they're match tough. I hope that we get a consistent stream of quality, top-rated premium content. I hope that we see them fight the absolute best in their division, even if that means going across the street and facing fighters represented by other promotional outfits. I hope we see all that. I hope we see very few pay-per-views, or if we do get regular pay-per-views, they look a lot like the show that we're getting this Saturday in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. And instead of getting 4 fights, you get 8 or 9 fights, with a lot of names and it's loaded cards. I really hope that's what we get. My hunch, if I had to bet on it, is that we're not going to get those things. And it's going to be more of what we've been getting for the last however many years. I hope I'm proven wrong, but I can already see, I'm already seeing the narratives shift with the cult. I'm seeing a bunch of tweets and posts on YouTube and stuff where, you know, the narrative just a few months ago was, oh, DAZN is dead zone. We'll never fight on an app. You have to fight on TV because TV has the proper infrastructure for boxing promotion. You reach a bigger audience, you know, all of that stuff, right? Now you're on an app, dude. So the narrative is changing. And what I'm starting to see is, well, Amazon Prime has more subscribers than ESPN Plus, than DAZN. So you got to come fight on our app. And I'm already seeing Gervonta Davis and Devin Haney have been going back and forth on Twitter, and their fans have been going back and forth on Twitter. And so you start to see these negotiations, you know, these mock negotiations play out among boxing fans on social media. And that's one of the narratives that I'm already seeing. It's like, hey, man, Amazon's got more subscribers. Why should Tank have to go over and fight on ESPN? And it's like, well, wait a second. Weren't you guys just saying a little while ago that you have to come fight on a network, on TV, because that's where boxing belongs and it doesn't belong on an app? Top Rank's the only promoter right now that has a network deal. Yes, they have ESPN Plus, the streaming app of ESPN, but they also have, they're part of ESPN's infrastructure. They have fights on the network, and they can use that promotional apparatus. That's been your whole MO, has been like, hey, man, come fight over on Showtime, come fight over on Fox on our side because we can use the network to promote the fight, blah, 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 right? Well, Top Rank's got everything at ESPN, the worldwide leader of sports content, right? So wouldn't it make sense that Gervonta Davis, should he fight Devin Haney, that's over on ESPN pay-per-view, because that's a network? Or is the narrative going to shift? Now you got to come fight on Amazon Plus or Amazon Prime because we have 150 million subscribers. We have more subscribers than you do. So you have to come fight on our platform. Even though it's an app and the other platform's a television network, those narratives and those goalposts, oh boy, do they move a lot depending on how these deals shake up, huh? So I'm already seeing that. Let me say this much about the 150 million subscribers. And this is something I haven't seen any media members asking either, because, you know, why do investigative journalism? Why ask tough questions? You know, why be skeptical and critical? The media is not supposed to do that. Come on. Yeah. So 150 million subscribers. That's half the country, literally half of the United States. The United States is 300 million people. Half of the country is subscribed to Amazon Prime. But the overwhelming majority of those subscribers have Amazon Prime for shopping. The majority of the subscribers are people like my wife, who's had Amazon Prime for years. If 30 minutes goes by and my wife doesn't order something from Amazon, I think her heart stops or something. Every day we get boxes at the damn doorstop from Amazon, right? Every freaking day we get packages 24/7 from Amazon. She has Amazon Prime for the free shipping, for the deals and all that kind of stuff. We don't really watch Amazon Prime. We have it, but we really don't watch it. That's most people, dude. And believe me, when this whole thing was announced, I reached out to multiple friends in the industry, family members, friends of mine who are fans, my dudes at the gym. And I asked them about this, and I'm like, do you have Amazon Prime? And if so, what do you have it for? And pretty much all of them said, oh, my wife got that shit for shopping. That's pretty much what they all said. So the 150 million subscribers thing that's going to become the new narrative, that's a little misleading. It's technically true, but what do I always say on this show? Nuance matters. Nuance matters in this case. We'll never have the numbers. We'll never know how many of that 150 million people are subscribed to Amazon to watch content. Are there any, does Amazon Prime have like shows? I think they have movies, right? But do they actually have their own show? You guys could let me know. Do they have their own shows the way like Netflix has like shows, right? I think Hulu has shows. Obviously, like Max has shows and stuff like that, but I don't know if Amazon does. You guys correct me if I'm wrong. But I will say this. It is a tremendous opportunity, because let's say only 1/5 of the 150 million are there to watch stuff on Amazon Prime TV. That's 30 million people, dude. That's 30 million people. Okay. So there's still a big opportunity there. And for the boxing business to thrive right now, for an app to thrive, you don't need millions and millions of subscribers anymore. Media is so fragmented now that you're not competing for millions or even tens of millions of views. You're kind of competing for hundreds of thousands of views. If you're doing a pay-per-view, you're competing for hundreds of thousands. You're not competing for millions. It's not about getting. This is where I think the business gets it wrong so often. In this day and age, with the way media is, and this is not just boxing, this is all media, the way it's so fragmented. Dude, you guys don't realize this. A lot of those like ESPN news shows during the day, they get like 300,000 views, 200,000 views. I'm dead serious. I've seen the reporting. Some of you out there have too. They're not getting millions of views. The reason why I bring this up is because, Amazon, if they can just build a good brand over there and get some loyalty from Amazon subscribers, dude, if you get 1 million people on Amazon watching your stuff, that's going to be enough to keep that platform going. So it's up. The onus is on PBC management to provide quality content that gets people interested and makes them want to watch. And believe me, Amazon is a tech company. Amazon is not a sports company. They are not an entertainment company. They're a tech company. Yes, they started as a book thing with it, but today, Amazon is a tech company. Tech companies know every single data point. They track everything. Amazon will know exactly how many people are watching, how many people sub to Amazon for boxing. They are going to know every single data point and 10 data points behind that data point. Okay. They're going to know the business behind the business way more than anybody at ESPN, Showtime, Fox, any of these other platforms will know, because that's what they specialize in. So if PBC doesn't get this right, it's not going to work out too well for them. All right. What else do we got? Okay, real quick, let's review a couple of fights that took place here. Let's go back a couple weeks to December 9th in San Francisco on DAZN pay-per-view. Devin Haney scores a unanimous decision win over Regis Prograis, wins the WBC junior welterweight title. Scores were 120, 107 3 times. Prograis was dropped in the third round. And ever since that point, Haney and Tank have been talking trash to each other on X. I do find it hilarious that Tank Davis has deleted most of his tweets going back and forth with Haney. This has been a common pattern with Tank. He seems to go on these bipolar tirades. He gets a call from Leonard Ellerbe, Floyd Mayweather, hey man, delete that shit. The next day it's gone. But a lot of people screenshot it. We've now seen the back and forth between these two. So I don't think Tank Davis is going to fight Devin Haney. I don't think that fight's going to happen anytime soon. Devin Haney is the exact kind of opponent that Tank Davis doesn't fight. If they ever did fight, Tank Davis would demand a catch weight and rehydration clause and all this nonsense. And I've already seen Leonard Ellerbe made a post earlier. I don't know if it was today or earlier this week, or I'm sorry, last week, where he basically said, I'm paraphrasing, if there's a fight between Tank and Haney, it's going to be negotiated from Tank's side. Tank's going to make the offer. We're going to control everything because we're the money man, right? That's basically 2023 promoters speak for, we don't want the freaking fight. Haney, a lot of people are saying he's the fighter of the year, that he's pound for pound. Right now, Devin Haney has wins over Jorge Linares, albeit an old, pretty much finished version of Jorge Linares, Joseph Diaz Jr., George Kambosos Jr. twice in Australia, and over the hill, Vasily Lomachenko. I don't say that disrespectfully, but Loma is not near his prime. I watched the guy fight and train right in front of me for years. He's lost half a step. So a past prime Lomachenko, and now Regis Prograis, who is a former, I think, two-time champion, two-time title holder. So that's a good run for Devin Haney. And you can make an argument that it's the best of all the young guns, including Teofimo Lopez, because Teofimo Lopez has 2 outstanding wins. But in between those 2 wins, doesn't quite have the resume of Devin Haney, okay? I would put Teo a little bit ahead of Haney because he fought the main man at 135, but then he fought the main man at 140. But it's neck and neck, and 2 of them are way ahead of Gervonta Davis, Shakur Stevenson, Ryan Garcia, any of these other young guys. They're far ahead in terms of their accomplishments. Here's why Devin Haney doesn't get my fighter of the year, Don. There's a couple reasons, okay? I rate his win over Prograis as a good win. Okay, for his first fight at 140, man, that's a good win. I get it. Regis Prograis has not been the same dude he was in that tournament since his loss to Josh Taylor. He's just not been the same guy. I don't think his resume has been bad. He's been inactive. And I rate that win as a high-level win for Haney. But at the same time, it's not beating Teofimo Lopez at 140. That's the fight I want to see because I think Teo's the top guy at 140 right now. I want to see Devin Haney in with a guy like that. To me, Regis Prograis, and I like Regis, exciting fighter and just a cool dude. Like I've talked with Regis, I've interviewed him. We've actually talked about books and stuff like that. He's an avid reader. He's a boxing historian, but he's just not the same dude. And I think he's kind of mentally checked out of the sport halfway. And it just seems like that's how he's been the last few years. He went independent in terms of his promotion, and I think that's cost him. So anyway, I give Haney, credit for a good win right there. But fighter of the year, and then he beats Lomachenko, right? But that was a really close fight, and there are a lot of people out there that felt Loma won that fight. A lot of you guys out there felt Loma won. So I compare that to what Terrence Crawford did to Errol Spence, which was he destroyed the guy. He ruined him. Not only did Crawford destroy Errol Spence by knocking him out, brutally just owning him, he blew up a narrative that had been pushed, a grift that had been pushed for 5 years. Boxing fans were lied to, manipulated, and taken advantage of by an entire platform and the executives at that platform. Terrence Crawford blew that shit up. That alone is fighter of the year worthy. And then we have Naoya Inoue, who obviously had the big win over Fulton. If he beats Topolis next week, to me, he edges it. But to me, it's between Inoue and Crawford. And nobody else is close, including Devin Haney. So I give the kid credit, but he's just not on that level, in my opinion. I'm not going to say it's smoke and mirrors, his resume, but there's nuance. How about that? There's nuance to it. All right. We got a guest here on the line. I'm going to bring a guest on as I sip some water. So I lose my freaking voice here. And we're going to talk a little bit about the business stuff, particularly PBC, Showtime, Amazon. We'll talk some pay-per-view numbers. So we're going to have some fun here. Let's bring him on. Mr. Rick Glazier. How you doing, sir? Can you hear me?
Good, Mike. How you doing? Doing well on this Monday.
Yeah, doing good, man. Not getting a whole lot of sleep these days, but other than that, I'm doing good. Thanks for being on, man.
That's what a newborn will do to you.
Oh, my God. I thought sparring was tough. Holy shit. This is a lot tougher. Well, Rick,
exactly.
Everybody knows who you are on the show, but just for those of the people out there who don't, can you just really quickly just give a little bit of your background? I mean, I would call you an international boxing agent, broker, and consultant. I know you've been doing that for like the last 30 years, but can you break down really quick, like a 90-second spiel about your experience in the sport?
January 1st, coming up January 1st, I'll be in the business 33 years full-time as my exclusive business. I brokered deals, render advice every day. And I set up career paths for fighters, for managers, for promoters, all kinds of different things that I do in boxing. I'm a 24/7, 365 worldwide provider of quality supplemental services to the professional boxing business worldwide. I presently have 46 corporate clients, and I love what I do and I enjoy what I do.
Awesome. All right, Rick. Well, I want to get right into this Showtime boxing thing because you called this shit over a year ago, and you
Well,
called it
yeah,
to a T.
exactly. Actually, last December, correcto. Exactly last December, I said in the fourth quarter of 2023 that Showtime would be announcing that they're leaving boxing in October. It was announced in October, and that's the fourth quarter of the year. It's the first month in the fourth quarter. And then on September 22nd, I actually announced that they've already made their decision. And then, of course, 2.5 weeks later, everybody's jumping at it with a big announcement. Like people were like, you know, Espinoza, the head of Showtime Boxing, Showtime Sports, he went around, him and Dan Raphael went around ringside. And basically at the Canelo fight, saying I didn't know what I was talking about. I was full of shit, blah blah blah. You know, yeah,
But
you
it
know,
turns out you called every single aspect of it pretty much spot on.
yeah.
And I know you took
Thank you.
heat for it. You take a lot of heat. You talk about pay-per-view numbers, the real pay-per-view numbers versus the fake shit that gets posted by the media. You take heat for that. But Rick, I feel you were vindicated with all of this because if the pay-per-view numbers were what was being reported, I think Showtime
Right.
would
They
still be in
still
boxing.
Showtime would still be well.
Absolutely.
That's what right. That's what happened to September 22nd. When I announced it. Well, what happened was they were leaving boxing programming on cable television, Showtime. That was not even in question at that going into towards the end of the year. Whether they were going to stay in the pay-per-view business as a distributor of pay-per-view was a different issue. Now they decided to bail on that too because those numbers that PBC were putting out through their operatives and some media people are their operatives,
Absolutely.
and they were lying about the numbers. And I kept telling everybody, if those numbers were correct, like they say they are, then they'll continue on in the pay-per-view business. If they're not, if my numbers are correct, they're not going to continue on, and they didn't continue. Okay, I know what the real numbers are. Okay, I've been getting the same numbers since the Floyd Mayweather Arturo Gatti fight, and that was July of 2004 from the same gentleman. He's a attorney in the TV business. He is located in LA. He at one time was a TV executive many years ago, but he has a law degree, and he went into the attorney aspect of TV. And he's semi-retired now. He's still working, but he's not like, he's not like you. He goes on vacations a lot now. But in the meantime, the point is that I'm making is that they were lying all along. And I kept telling these people, everybody for years, that these numbers are wrong. And people were like always skeptical because guys like Raphael, and he was with ESPN for a long time. Then Kevin Iole, who was with Yahoo for a long time till recently, they're all reporting all these pie in the sky numbers that they're getting fed to by the media. And I kept telling everybody, when then people would say to me on Twitter, well, how, or call into talk shows and stuff like that. And they'd say to me, well, why should we believe your numbers over all these other people? Because they're not announced numbers by Showtime. They're being fed numbers. And if those numbers they were so proud of those numbers, Showtime, they would be announcing the real numbers, because a corporation like Showtime, which is publicly traded, the parent company's publicly traded, they can't lie by 20% or more when they make those kind of announcements, because if not, that's corporate fraud. And it was just a big spiral, and nobody got it. And I kept telling everybody, and nobody would listen. And yes, I do definitely feel vindicated. Thank you, Mike.
Yeah, and I want to be clear about something because I've been critical of Espinoza. I really think he's not the sole reason, but he's one of the primary reasons that Showtime Boxing failed, because he didn't push back enough, Rick. He didn't demand the top fights get made, and he stopped. His loyalty should have lied with Showtime and Showtime subscribers, not PBC executives. And I felt that if he was doing his job correctly, a fight like Benavidez Plant should have happened 3-4 years ago when they both had titles, and it could have been a unification bout. A fight like Crawford and Spence should have happened years ago. In fact, Crawford Spence, that's when I knew something was up, because at that point I knew, okay, the writing's on the wall, Showtime's done, because they actually made that fight. Because I don't know if you remember, Rick, I think it was earlier this year, it might have been late last year, where PBC basically paid the sanctioning organization to bump Keith Thurman up to #1 in the ratings. They were going to try to do Spence Thurman. They wanted to delay the Crawford fight even more if they could. They couldn't, because they knew, they got word that it was going to be done at Showtime, and they wanted to make sure their guy got paid. So they did it.
That's Mike, that's a fallacy what you just said, but
Okay.
you're not wrong. Everybody was wrong on that. That's not what happened. What happened was David Burson, who's the head of CBS Sports, who became Espinosa's boss. Okay.
Oh, you're right. Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
I don't stop when they restructured everything.
Right.
Yeah.
He forced them to come up with the best fights, or they weren't going to do them. Period.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's how it started. That's how the ball. It was okay, and for Burson, it was basically going out of business sale, because what he was saying was, we're either going to go out of business with these great fights, or they're going to do great pay-per-view numbers, and we're going to decide to stay in the business. Well, they didn't do great pay-per-view numbers, so that's when they bailed totally on boxing.
Yeah, and I'm seeing a lot of people out there saying that the biggest issue is piracy. A lot of fans are pirating the pay-per-views. They're not paying for it. They're streaming it. But my thing is, man, you have to provide the content that makes fans want to pay.
Well, let me explain this to you. The best way to say piracy is a huge problem, but yes, you need fights. So the two fighters in boxing that are attractions to the general sporting public, not just boxing fans, are Canelo and Ryan Garcia.
Mhm.
Now, why do I say that? Well, Canelo's consistently doing over 500,000 pay-per-views, at least 500,000 pay-per-views. And there people actually, that's what the number is. So in other words, there's other people stealing it, but they're actually buying it. Okay,
Right.
Ryan Garcia, the fight before Ryan Garcia and Tank Davis fought, Tank in January 7th of this year, Tank did 61,000 buys on pay-per-view. He did over 1.2 million with Ryan Garcia. Ryan Garcia's people are the general sporting public. They can't. They're Instagram followers.
Right.
He's got 11 million Instagram followers. Ryan Garcia, and the people were buying it because of Ryan Garcia, not because of Tank. What can you count on Tank? You could have counted on 61,000 when Tank fought in 2021. When Tank fought Pitbull Cruz, Isaac Pitbull Cruz, he did 52,000 buys. So Tank is not this big pay-per-view attraction that they want to make him out to be. The truth of the matter is, he's a big gate attraction.
Yes.
Because you can't steal the gate. Okay,
Yeah,
so the people are coming.
Yeah.
Right, the people are coming out to see him, but the people that are buying it on pay-per-view are pirating it. There's not even a question. So the general sporting public gets behind Canelo and Ryan Garcia, so that's why you get all those buys for those two particular guys. Boxing has not lost its popularity. Okay, what's happened is there's the boxing fans, they've been pay-per-viewed to death, and they're retorting. They're pushing back by stealing the pay-per-view.
Yeah, and I made a comparison recently to the music industry. I'm sure you remember around 2000 when Napster came out and all these these apps came out where people could share music because they were getting gouged. The record industry was charging like $18 for an album that cost 30 cents to make, and people were buying the whole album for one song. Now they found out a way they can just go around the industry and just download the songs and share them with each other. But the music industry, to their credit, adjusted. And now you can order like Apple Music and you can download music that way. And piracy is still an issue, but the music industry is thriving because they have found a way to monetize the downloading and the streaming of music. How can boxing do that? How can boxing thrive in this era where there are a lot of fans out there? If they're not super, super invested in the fighter or the matchup, they're going to pirate it.
You know what? It's a great question, but I'm not that technically inclined to be able to answer that. Somehow electronically, through technology, cut down on the pirating somehow if they can. I don't know. I don't have those answers.
Well, they have tried that, and they've done better at it, combating the piracy, but you can't beat them all. People are always one step ahead. How about less pay-per-views and let's charge $40 instead of $80? Do you think that's got to help?
Right? Not really. Not really, because no, not really. The people are still going to steal it, are stealing it out of because they can. So in other words, let me explain what that means. A lot of people, this is really weird. A good working guy goes out every day and he goes to work, and at the end of the day, he says, I made 500 today. He's real proud of himself. Well, the people that are stealing it, that makes them feel proud that they were able to steal it and beat the system. So it doesn't matter if you charge $19.95, $40, $85, they're still going to steal it.
Okay, doesn't matter. How about this? Because I do agree with you in a sense, although, people might be bullshitting me, but I talk to a lot of fans every day on Twitter, on X, and they tell me, yeah, dude, I pay when it's a good matchup. I steal it when it's a B-level matchup.
Nah,
they're degenerates. They're still going to watch.
No. They're full of shit. If they're stealing it, they're stealing it. That's like saying I'm going to rob a 7-Eleven, but I'm not going to rob that. I'm not going to rob that one because of the building's painted a different color, or it's got brick. Come on.
Okay, well, ridiculous. How about this? You mentioned Canelo Alvarez. You mentioned Ryan Garcia. There are definitely millions of people pirating their events, but there are people buying them because they're invested in the fighter. How does boxing get more fans invested?
Well, the fighters have to fight more often. They're too far in between fights. The average PBC champion over the last few years has fought every 14 months in 1 week. So one world champ. Okay, that's ridiculous. They have to fight more often to attract more people to pay attention to them. We've lost our way. I'm going to explain something, how much we've lost our way. Now, let's go to Ali Frazier. Okay, the first fight, March 8th, 1971. I was 12 years old. And I went to the movie theater to watch the fight. The next morning, I picked up the newspaper. Well, they delivered it to my family home. I picked up the newspaper, and what's on the front page of the paper? Everything under the sun about the fight. The headlines, the picture, Ali going down, Ali, another one standing in this corner after the knockdown recovery with his hands on the ropes. A whole front page. Okay, now that was 71. Let's go to 82, 83 era. We were on the front page of the sports section, the biggest fights. Okay, let's go to 1993 now, 10 years later, approximately 10 years later. Okay, we were lucky to be on the front page of the sports section. Okay. By the time 2004 came around, we were on the internet, and it was like an article, not on the front page of the sports section, and the inside of the section, and just a little thing about the fight, like no big deal, like it wasn't even a big fight. They're the biggest fights in the land. And now there's not one word in public newspapers about boxing. It's all on the internet and podcasts, and just in general on the internet, in some form of social media, and that's hurting the business. Okay, is our boxing on apps hurting the business? Yes, but the television entities has rejected boxing for multiple reasons. The only U.S. TV carrier right now that's doing live professional boxing is ESPN.
Right.
And not only they're doing it on regular ESPN, they're doing it on ESPN Plus, which is their app, and ESPN Deportes, which is the Hispanic version. Okay, nobody else is doing boxing on television anymore. Showtime just left; they're done. HBO went out exactly 5 years ago. And, Al Heyman killed off a lot of TV networks. He's blazed through, him and his PBC, has blazed through 11 TV networks in 8 years. So,
Yeah. And, Rick, I get accused of being an Al Heyman hater. I know you do as well.
but wait, time out. The difference is I admit it. You don't.
Well, I gotta be Rick. That's
and I don't hate. By the way, I don't hate Al Heyman personally. I don't like what he's done to boxing. I don't like how he conducts business.
Well, that's what I would say.
How he's done. Right.
I don't have any hate for anybody in my heart, but I don't like the way that they do business. It's good for their fighters. They do get their fighters paid. In fact, they're grossly overpaid.
But
it's detrimental.
That's why they're killing. That's why they're killing the networks.
Exactly,
because they've been grossly overpaid. Number one. Number two is it's not good for the fighters because the fighters become complacent, then they won't fight for less. They've had this problem now with Keith Thurman. I'm trying to think, Danny Garcia. I'm trying to think who they are. There's like 3 or 4 Lara, these PBC fighters. They can't get that big money anymore, so now they don't want to fight. Well, that was inflated market value that Heyman dreamed up with money with the $900 million from Whiteout Reed. So there's your answer.
Yeah, for me, like what I always tell people is this comes from, for me, it doesn't come from hate. It comes from love. It comes from love for the sport. So I'm a child of the 80s, teenager of the 90s, young adult of the 2000s. I was born in 79. Okay. So I grew up in the 80s in Detroit when Thomas Hearns was a hero and he was on the front page everywhere. He was doing commercials on TV everywhere. Hearns was everywhere. It was Hearns and Isaiah Thomas. And then it became Barry Sanders later on. Those guys were all over TV where I grew up. And so I grew up in an era where boxing was still very relevant and it was talked about in the mainstream, and the fighters were loved and they fought often. The numbers were big and it just got bastardized, man. And look, Al Heyman is not the only guy that has done things that I vehemently disagree with. I've disagreed with Bob Arum at times, Eddie Hearn, all of them. But there's a track record there. You talked about the 11 networks. 11 networks have broadcast PBC fights and decided ultimately not to re-sign them. Right. The Showtime boxing just ended. No network wanted them. No network. They had to go to a streaming platform after years of saying, we'll never go to a streaming platform. That should tell fans something. And talking about that doesn't mean you hate. It's just you're concerned and you want to bring it up. So anyway, I see you get a lot of shtick, man. A lot of stick from people out there. And I just don't think you deserve it. I think you're just trying to tell people the truth.
I'm like an oil slick duck going through the murky waters of Twitter and professional boxing. I navigate those waters every day. It's no big deal. I go to fights and people want, they want, as my wife says about me, either people want to kiss me on both cheeks or put 2 behind my ear. One of the two. There's no,
honestly though, that means you're doing it right. People just don't understand. Like, you don't have to agree with everything somebody says, but I always question the source when I hear people commenting and being critical or whatever. And to me, I think your heart's in the right place. You're just trying to inform fans of what's really going on because fans have to spend their money to consume this sport. It's not free.
That's one thing that I've pushed. People ask me all the time, well, how come, you're in boxing full time, aren't you worried about this guy's gonna get mad at you and you're not going to make a living? I said, don't worry about it. I'll never run out of clients. I'm a very talented person. I know I'm a very hard worker. And basically what's happened is that I saw a void that all these reporters are talking about fights and fighters. They're not giving anybody any information. I said,
Yeah.
geez, these people are paying. This is the one sport that you have to pay to watch. Basically anything good you got to watch. You got to pay to watch. And even if it was on HBO, even if it was on Showtime, you're still paying additional for that. And you know what? It basically is. It's the only, the Super Bowl, the Daytona 500, the Indianapolis 500, the World Series. Everything's free. You can be a sports fan of any sport but boxing. Watch every event. It don't cost you a dime.
Yep.
Boxing, it ends up costing you $1,500-$1,600 a year. Well,
Yes.
those people, though, I don't even call them fans. I call them boxing enthusiasts, because to be a fan, you have to be an enthusiast. And in the meantime, I'm willing to fork out $1,500-$1,600 a year. I have a friend of mine he's not doing well in life. He loves boxing. And he gets a limited amount of Social Security every month. He gets Social Security, a little disability, and he spends $150 a month on boxing. And that's a lot of money of his income. If you take the percentage, it's a huge amount of his income. Okay, I mean, huge amount. It's actually 15% of his income, and he couldn't do without it. He loves boxing, but the point is, it costs him $150 a month every month. By the time he pays the pay-per-views, he had Showtime. This is since went out of business.
Right.
He's got the ESPN Plus app, and with the pay-per-views, it's costing him $150 a month. All total, by the time you average out, some months are one pay-per-view, some months are two pay-per-views. So it costed him $1,800 a year. But and people will pay that, but you got to give them quality. And the promoters, as a general rule, that are doing pay-per-view, okay, which is basically PBC, they're not giving the people quality. Okay, and these are fights that should not be on pay-per-view. The Benavides and what's his name there,
Andrade.
Andrade,
Yeah,
was not pay-per-view.
terrible fight.
Should not have been pay-per-view. Okay, I mean, so do I think Haney and Loma should have been pay-per-view? As somebody asked me, I said barely. Barely.
Yeah. That was hard.
Barely pay-per-view. Spence and Crawford should have been pay-per-view. Yes, it turned out to be a dud because it was so one-sided. But going in, it warranted pay-per-view. Two undefeated welterweights, undisputed, for the undisputed world welterweight championship guys undefeated. One guy was an Olympian, and they're the two biggest names in the division for an awful long time. So yes, that should have been pay-per-view. Should the Fury fights with Wilder, all three been pay-per-view? Yes, 100%. Should the Canelo fights be pay-per-view? Yes, because you got to pay Canelo an ungodly amount of money, and that's why it should be pay-per-view. I'm not saying all the guys he fights should be pay-per-view, but because based on his guarantees per fight, yes, his fight should be on pay-per-view. All the other ones are hit and miss.
Yeah. Speaking of pay-per-view, how did Haney and Prograis do? Do you have those numbers?
It just broke 50,000, barely.
Wow. It doesn't surprise me.
It didn't attract the general public. It did not attract the general, but boxing enthusiasts only. That's just what it was. You got to sell pay-per-view in this era. Okay, that's ERA era. Okay, you have to have fighters that attract the general sporting public, which is Canelo and Ryan Garcia. And even Tyson Fury has not done well on pay-per-view in America without Wilder.
Absolutely.
After beating Wilder. So
yeah, and Wilder's pay-per-views without Fury were all bombs.
Correct.
So these guys need top level. Everybody needs a top level opponent, except, to your point, Ryan Garcia and Canelo Alvarez, and maybe even Jake Paul. Jake Paul probably brings in more guaranteed pay-per-view buys than most of the boxing stars.
Yes. That to me is more of more entertainment than it is boxing. But
Of course.
yes, Jake Paul. But that's what I'm saying to you. Another guy that's attracting the general public.
Yeah.
Okay, that's another case in point, and that's the difference here. People aren't recognizing that, and you've got to have fights that attract the general public. Those are the true pay-per-view fights, and these other fights, they're just putting them on pay-per-view because there's no budget or they got to overpay the fighters. Well, if you're creating a false market by overpaying the fighters because they're not worth what they're drawing, so you're creating a false market by doing that.
Yeah, I think back to like somebody like Ray Leonard. He was an Olympian, and instantly he's fighting on network TV and fighting often. And when he was a prospect, he wasn't fighting world beaters, but he was fighting often on network TV, and he was being promoted. And the American public knew who he was. If Ray Leonard had gone pro and gone off instantly to like HBO and fought once a year, nobody would. I mean, people would know him, but he wouldn't have been anywhere near the star he became. It's about exposure, and the way to get these guys out there is like, man, get them in the ring 3 or 4 times a year, even if it's stay busy fights, and don't charge for it. And people, eventually you'll build a brand.
I have a good one for you. Okay, so Duran was world lightweight champion from basically 1972 to basically 76 over a 4-year period. Okay, world lightweight champ, right? Okay, and he defended his title multiple times a year. During that time period, he fought as over the weight fights, and basically some of them were even junior welterweight fights, but they were non-world title fights during that same period as world champion. Do you know how many times he fought over that 4.5-year period? 28 times in non-world title fights, besides all his world title challenges. That tells you that's in a 4.5 and basically a 4-year to 4.5-year period. So that's average of 7 fights a year plus your world title fights a year, which were 3 and 4. So there's your answer, right?
Yeah, I mean, you could say the same thing about Chavez and other guys. They
Right.
fought so often, and that's why they're beloved. It didn't matter that they lost fights. It doesn't really matter. It didn't tarnish their legacy at all.
And Arturo Gatti didn't hurt his legacy at all. He lost. It didn't hurt Diego Corrales'. It's a funny thing about Diego Corrales. People have been a revisionist of history about him. Now that I thought he was great fighter to watch. He was pleasing as all heck to watch. Don't get me wrong, he was fun. But people act like now that he died at the peak of his career. He had lost his last 3 fights before he got killed on the motorcycle accident.
Brutally lost.
Yeah, he got destroyed in his last 3 fights. Another thing is amongst Italian Americans, okay? And you can appreciate this. You know how many people now think that Rocky Marciano died while he was world champion when he had been retired for 14 years when he got killed in a plane crash? Rick, I get asked a this, like maybe 4 or 5 times a year. Rick, if Marciano, if he wouldn't have killed a plane crash, how long do you think he could have been champ after? How long many years? I said he was retired 14 years when the plane went down.
Yeah, his hairline had receded. He was definitely not in fight shape. Marciano did so much for the Italian American people, bringing, I don't know how to put this, but ingratiating Italians to the greater Anglo society, where they had kind of been ostracized for a long time and almost feared. And he kind of made it okay to root for an Italian guy. He kind of broke through. He did a lot for civil rights in that respect. So it doesn't surprise me that you get questions like that,
Right. I mean, this is a good one. I'm trying to figure out what year it was, but it wasn't that long ago. It was maybe like 2008 or 2009 when he was retired, like 5-6 years already. Lennox Lewis, who's the heavyweight champ now? Lennox Lewis. Well, he retired in 2004 and hadn't fought since 2000. It was like 5 or 6 years later. And the guy didn't have any clue at all. I was sat next to a guy playing once that in like 2005 that thought that Mike Tyson was still the heavyweight
I
champ.
was just gonna say, yeah, Mike Tyson. There's still people out there that think Mike Tyson's the champion. I mean, they
Yeah.
still talk about him, man. It's just when you leave that kind of legacy, people are going to remember your name. It's just
Yeah,
so simple.
well, that's true. That's definitely true, Mike. Not even a question. But what people don't understand about boxing is there's two different segments of boxing. There's the white collar faction and the blue collar faction. The sport is the blue collar faction, and the business is the white collar faction. Just because you know the sport, what you see on TV, or because you can train a fighter, or because you were a fighter, or because you're a manager, it doesn't mean you know anything about the business aspect of boxing. The business is a completely different animal than the sport.
Absolutely. Yeah, and it's a very unique business. People from other parts of the entertainment industry think they can just kind of jump in, and they're like, holy shit, when they really get in there and see the sausage being made, it's a different business, brother. But Rick,
No question.
I got to move on with my show, man. Can you just real quick tell people how they can find you on social media? And thank you so much for being on the show. We'll definitely do this again. I hope you have a great holidays with the wife, and you enjoy everything. And we'll talk
Yep,
soon.
it's real Rick Glaser 1 on Twitter. I'm a verified account. I got about 9,500 followers, and I answer all boxing questions on Twitter. And whatever, Mike, have me on again. It's very enjoyable, and your pleasure. And we'll talk.
Thanks
Thank
a
you.
lot, Rick.
Happy holidays. Bye
You
bye.
too, brother. Thank you. All right, there he goes, everybody. Good stuff, man. Good stuff. Now I'm trying to figure out where I was. And real quick, just to put a cap on all that, guys, again, and Rick has been, he's a very outspoken PBC critic. Okay, I'd say more so than myself. I'm critical of the way some of the business is done there, and the defense that I always hear from people is, well, the fighters are getting paid. Cool, the fighters are getting paid, but the industry the industry is suffering. The sport is suffering. We're being pushed further and further and further underground. Again, if I can make a comparison to the music industry, you go back to the 90s where the record companies were making record profits. They were making billions of dollars because they were taking advantage of music fans. And they were saying back then, well, hey, we're look at the profits we're making. Yeah, these, they pushed music underground, and people said, well, screw you, we're not going to go to the record stores anymore, we're going to just download this crap. I'm not talking about 2020s where you young guys grew up with that. I'm talking about, this is like 2000. Okay, it was very new. But even like my mom and dad, who at that point were like 40, they were doing it. I knew like my grandparents were downloading songs, like people, like elderly people, everyone was doing it. The music industry pushed too far, and it almost forced people to start pirating stuff. And so because they were overpaid, it was just inflated. We have to have a great reset in this sport to a certain extent, and just a market correction. Now, are we going to have that? Is it going to happen? I doubt it. But I express these things not to hate, not to be dismissive of one platform over another. But look, they don't all operate the same way. Okay, I give all of them credit for what they do well. So like PBC is the best at taking an existing fighter's brand and expanding that brand to a more mainstream casual audience, particularly with the youth. They're very good at that. They're good at marketing to the youth, and their pay-per-view events are, generally speaking, the production's very good. Over at Top Rank, they are the best at developing young talent, developing prospects, signing young prospects and building them into elite level fighters. They do that better than anybody in the business. They can spot talent better than anybody. When a fighter signs with Top Rank, particularly a prospect, they see something in that guy. Sometimes what they see is dollars. Sometimes they say, listen, this guy won't be a great fighter, but we can market him. He's got a niche that we can market. But sometimes they see something special. Terrence Crawford's a guy that flew under the radar. PBC didn't sign him. Golden Boy didn't. No one signed him. Top Rank saw something there, and look what they did with Crawford. They developed him into possibly the greatest fighter in the world right now. He's number 1 or number 2. Okay. Top Rank did that. So they're very good at that. But Top Rank's also very, very bad at marketing their fighters, particularly marketing to the youth. I would say they're just not very good at that. They have a difficult time getting their fighters and turning them into crossover stars. Biggest reason, they don't overpay guys. So they're not going to get those big names. Like Canelo is signed with every promoter in boxing, literally everybody. Canelo has worked with Golden Boy, Matchroom, and now PBC. He's worked with small-time promoters when he was first coming up. He's never worked with Top Rank because he ain't going to get overpaid there. So Top Rank is more of like a niche market where they go. Like they're not trying to like reinvent the wheel. They're just doing what they've been doing, and it works for them. And then there's Matchroom. Eddie Hearn has set up this great global infrastructure on DAZN where there's a lot of potential there for growth over the next 10, 20 plus years. If he can get some fighters to sign on and he has more stars, he needs more Anthony Joshuas. He needs a couple more Anthony Joshuas, and then he really can have a global thing happening. So he's doing really well in the global market. All these guys have their little niche at what they do very, very well. In American boxing, though, the platform that has contributed the most to boxing's further minimalization and, forcing it to be underground, it's undeniable, guys, which platform that is. It's just undeniable. So I bring these things up because I'm concerned as a fan and I want this sport to thrive. That's it. And I'm concerned about a lot of you guys out there that are spending your hard-earned money on this stuff and you're being told it's an $80 steak when it's really a $10 cheeseburger. And that's what Steven Espinoza pulled for years. And we've heard 2023 was this amazing year with this incredible schedule. PBC's schedule was so amazing. There are 3 really breakthrough fights, which was Canelo Charlo, which is a fight no one asked for, Crawford Spence, which is a fight that people have been asking for half a decade, and Tank Garcia, which nobody really asked for, but it was 2 young influencers. So it made a lot of sense. And commercially, it was a super big fight. All 3 of those were crossover promotions. Ryan Garcia is a Golden Boy fighter. Canelo is Canelo. He's not a PBC guy. Crawford, not a PBC guy. So the 3 events they had this year that broke through and did real numbers, crossover promotions. That should tell you everything. All their other pay-per-views tanked and lost money. Okay? And by the way, ESPN's pay-per-view with Lomachenko Haney, that didn't do well either. This other pay-per-view with Haney and Prograis, that didn't do well. Okay? You've got to have those crossover fights where the top guys are fighting each other, or at least the most popular guys. In the case of Tank and Garcia, they're not the best fighters, but they're super popular, particularly Garcia. If you get those big names fighting each other, the top dudes in the division, the fans will show up. I mean, the proof is in the pudding, right? All the other events, they're struggling. That's just the reality of it. All right. I wanted to review last Saturday, December 16th in Glendale, Arizona on DAZN. Jesse Bam Rodriguez scores a 9th round stoppage win over Sonny Edwards, unifies 2 of the flyweight belts. Bam Rodriguez, 23 years old, has now defeated Carlos Cuadras, Susaket Soa Runbisai, and Sonny Edwards. Those are 3 solid wins. And there's talk that he is going to fight Juan Francisco Estrada next year. I love that fight. Estrada is kind of on his way out, so the timing is just right. Bam is, I'm not going to put him on the pound-for-pound list. I don't see pound-for-pound level accomplishments yet, but he's definitely one of the top young American fighters. And the guys that get a lot of publicity in the media, the Gervonta Davis types, the Shakur Stevensons, Ryan Garcia, I think Bam is more accomplished. He doesn't maybe have the same amount of world titles and stuff like that. I'm just looking at his recent run. Kid's had some amazing accomplishments for a 23-year-old fighter. So he deserves tremendous credit. Tremendous credit. Let's a little bit about this fight. I think anybody who understands boxing knew right away that on paper this was like a close fight, a very interesting matchup because of the styles and stuff. But the heavy favorite had to be Bam. Had to be. Sonny Edwards does a lot of interesting defensive movements. You know, he's slick. He's an athletic guy. He's probably more athletic than Bam in that sense. But a lot of his movement is wasted and his defense is overrated. Guys, there are 4 aspects to defensive boxing. 4, okay? The first thing you defend with is your feet. You get out of range. You just move your feet and get out of range to where a punch can't land. If you're 10 feet away from your opponent, he can't land a punch, right? So your feet. Then it's slipping and dipping, right? Just avoiding shots in the pocket, slipping and making your opponent miss. Then it's blocking a punch, using your gloves, your forearms to catch punches, even sometimes rolling, catching it with your shoulder, catching the punches. And then the 4th is holding. If all 3 of those have failed and you're getting beat up a little bit, you need to break, you hold, right? So those are the 4 aspects of defensive boxing. A lot of guys in this era get credit for being defensive wizards because they use their feet. They get out of range and move around. Yet, those other 3 aspects of defensive boxing I just mentioned, they're not very good at. Demetrius Andrade is a prime example of this. But Sonny Edwards, in my opinion, is too. And, you know, this is no disrespect. I'm not trying to beat up on anybody, but the greatest defensive fighters in the history of boxing, okay, one standard thing you see is that they are able to stand in the pocket and make their opponents miss. They are able to stand in the pocket and catch punches and counter. So whether they're slipping everything or catching everything, they are able to stay in mid-range in the pocket and make their opponents miss and make them pay. A lot of guys get credit for being defensive wizards that basically just run. But when they're in the mid-range, when they're in on the inside, they struggle. That's not a complete defensive fighter. So when you really, really look at that, and then the fact that Sonny Edwards doesn't punch hard, and in professional boxing, you have to have enough pop to get your opponent's respect. If you don't, you're going to struggle at the highest level. You're just going to struggle at the highest level. You've got to have respectable power. You don't have to have game-changing power, but you have to have respectable power to keep your opponent off you at times and to get them to think twice, right? Just to get them to reset. You might not have to hurt them with every punch, but just stop them in their tracks and force them to reset. And Edwards doesn't have that. Okay, Demetrius Andrade, another guy, particularly at 168, doesn't have that. How did anybody think that the fight between him and Benavidez was going to be competitive? How did anybody think that? Insane, right? I've used this fighter's name recently as an example. I'll bring him up again. Chris Bird. A lot of you younger guys don't know Chris Bird. You were just a kid when he was fighting. Go back and look at some of his fights. I think he's a criminally underrated American fighter in recent years. That guy could stand right in front of you and make you look foolish and make you miss. And then he could connect with a counter shot that wouldn't hurt you because he was an undersized heavyweight, but it would sting and stop you in your tracks and force you to reset because you didn't see the punch coming and it was thrown with precision and accuracy. So Chris Bird, he was a defensive fighter that didn't knock people out, you know, as a heavyweight. Normally, I'm not really into that style, but the way he did it was really entertaining. And you could watch him fight a guy and make him miss and look silly, and then he'd slap him a few times and get out of range. And it was actually entertaining because he did it in the pocket. He didn't run. So there's an example for some of you younger guys who don't know what I'm talking about. Okay, let's do the preview. So 2 fight cards to preview real quick. Okay, this Saturday, December 23rd. And then next week on the 26th from Tokyo on ESPN Plus, ESPN Plus, I've talked about them. Of all the streaming platforms, of all the networks, ESPN/ESPN Plus, in my opinion, in 2023, I'm talking non-pay-per-view, people, okay? Non-pay-per-view. In terms of the regular programming you get, particularly on the app, I think they slaughtered everybody. I think they slaughtered Showtime, PBC. I think they slaughtered Matchroom and DAZN. I think that what Top Rank and ESPN Plus has provided this year on the regular network, non-pay-per-view, has been outstanding. And the fact that they're going to bring us Inoue Tapales is another reason why I give them the nod. And I'll talk about that fight in a second. Let me get to this Riyadh thing. Riyadh. Okay, look, if you're just joining the show, I talked at the top of the show about this card coming up in Saudi Arabia. It's $40. I love that it's on in the afternoon. I love that there are like 8 or 9 fights on the card, not the standard 4 fights. And all of them are basically they're not great fights, but they're all decent fights. There's enough here that they're going to get my money. I am proudly, openly, publicly going to send them my $40. Okay. Anthony Joshua versus Otto Wallin. Again, decent heavyweight fight. Deontay Wilder versus, I believe, a shot Joseph Parker. Decent fight. Daniel Dubois versus Jarrell Miller. I actually think that fight might be better than the other two, the way it all plays out. This name. Arslanbek Makhmudov. 18-0 Russian-Canadian going up against Ajit Kabayel out of Germany. This is a step-up fight for him. Interesting fight with a heavyweight prospect. Dimitri Bivol, one of the best fighters in the world, one of the top dozen or so fighters in the world, pound for pound, going up against Lyndon Arthur of England, defending his WBA light heavyweight belt. Jai Opataya is going to fight an English guy, Ellis Zorro. I think he has to dump his IBF belt, but he's willing to do that to stay on this card. He doesn't give a shit about the belt. I saw something about that. I didn't see all the details, but I just saw a mention of that on Twitter. Frank Sanchez from Cuba going up against Junior Fa of New Zealand. That's an interesting matchup, guys. That's an interesting heavyweight fight. Again, decent fight, not great. And then Filip Hrgovic versus Mark Demori, an Australian with an awful resume who is going to get absolutely flattened in this fight. That's pretty much a showcase of all showcases. But there's enough here. I like this one. I'll be watching it Saturday with you guys. Next week, let's talk about Tokyo real quick. ESPN Plus, Naoya Inoue versus Marlon Tapales for undisputed at junior featherweight. Inoue fought Paul Butler last December to win undisputed at bantamweight. He's going to have 2 fights this year. If he wins this fight against Tapales, he's undisputed at junior featherweight. And he would be an undisputed champion. He would have won undisputed championships in 2 weight classes within 1 year. That is unprecedented in this era. It has happened before in boxing history, not in the 4-belt era. So it has happened before. But in the 4-belt era, this is unprecedented. And he would be a lock, in my opinion, for Fighter of the Year, especially if he dominates this fight. Now, look, Stephen Fulton, Marlon Tapales, not necessarily elite pound-for-pound level fighters. I get it. But to move up to yet another weight class and in 2 fights, clean it out. Fight the 2 top guys in the division and clean it out within a calendar year of cleaning out the last division you fought in. Guys, that's Fighter of the Year worthy. Okay, so if Inoue takes care of business next week, he is my Fighter of the Year. If he struggles, if it's close, if it's a draw, maybe you could give the nod to Crawford. But in my opinion, I think Inoue is going to take care of business and look really good here, and he's going to be the Fighter of the Year when he goes undisputed again. As far as Anthony Joshua, Deontay Wilder, I think they both win those fights. I think Joshua is in a lot tougher. It's going to be a tougher fight for him stylistically, but he did fight Wallin in the amateurs. They've seen each other before. Joshua has improved a lot since then. I do think Joshua and Wilder will win. The fact that both of them should fight early next year makes me love this card even more. So, okay, that's it with all that. Oh, I want to mention too, as I'm talking about, the business of boxing a lot on this show recently. And the reason why I'm talking about the business of boxing a lot is because there's been some moving and shaking. There have been tremendous changes. Guys, for Showtime Boxing to go away after being in the sport for decades, basically my entire life, that's huge. That's monumental. You're going to talk about that. I saw a couple of you guys in the comments are upset, like, oh, man, all he's talking about is promoters and the business. Guys, that's been the biggest news story the biggest thing to happen in boxing this year. That's a massive deal. That's a big deal. Okay. So that's why I've been talking about it. Anyway, ESPN Plus, they're going to get my money. So there are two platforms this weekend getting my money in very different ways. DAZN is getting a one-off $40 payment from me for this pay-per-view that I like. I have unsubscribed from DAZN a long time ago because their content is not worth $200+ a year. I stopped subscribing. They took me for granted. I've had it with them. But if they do more of this, there's no need to subscribe, but I'll buy these pay-per-views. If they do more of this, I'll definitely be buying more of them. So they're getting $40 from me. My ESPN Plus subscription ran out a few months ago over the summer, and I didn't re-up. I looked at the schedule and I said, there's some interesting fights here, but I can watch most of these the next day, whatever. I don't want to stay up till 1 in the morning, 2 in the morning, listening to Mark Kriegel talk about the fighters, grandmas, uncles, step uncle's dog, walking friend. I don't care, right? But this week, I'm resubscribing to ESPN Plus for one reason only. Naoya Inoue. Naoya Inoue is going to fight next week, and then he's probably going to fight twice more next year. So essentially, my $150 investment to buy ESPN Plus is to watch Naoya Inoue fight 3 times over the next 12 months, which he should. So ESPN Plus is getting my money because they represent and broadcast Naoya Inoue. The theme of this show, I talked to Rick Glaser and we talked about the business of boxing and the only breakthrough names, that bring in the casual fan. Okay. To me, and I don't agree with everything Rick said. I know he doesn't agree with everything I said. To me, what gets people spending money on boxing is getting invested in the fighters. You have to be invested in fighters. If you're invested as a fan, and there's many different reasons to get invested in a fighter. There's plenty of different reasons, okay? But it might just be, like for me, most of the time, it's just the way they fight. It's the style they fight with. It's their ring accomplishments. It's what they're doing. Is it special, right? And when you get invested in a fighter, there's like this ride you go on. It's kind of like the way most musicians, their careers go, or even actors and stuff. But most musicians, most bands have this like underground period where not everyone knows who they are, right? And they're cutting their teeth, they're learning the business, right? And they're real raw and hungry. And then they have this breakthrough, right? And then they have this huge peak where they're selling millions of albums and all this, right? And then they have a fall. And most bands completely fall all the way off. Some are able to fall and kind of come back and stick around for a long, long time. Those bands are rare. Most have that peak and dip, right? It's like that with fighters. And so I'm thinking right now in the business of boxing, and I'm thinking like, man, guys, I haven't been as interested in watching as much the last year or so. Now, my life has changed. I had 2 daughters. So my priorities have shifted, and my top priority is my children. My children are going to get my attention, my time, my money, my resources, my energy, and my love and support before boxing does. So that's probably the biggest change. But in terms of just boxing, I'm just not as invested in a lot of these fighters right now. The one guy in the sport that I gotta see fight live right now is Naoya Inoue. He's the one guy. There are a couple others I'm interested in as well, and I'm going to watch them. But the one guy where I'm like, I gotta see this shit. I don't care if it's on at 5 a.m. live from Japan. I'm going to get up and watch this, sip some coffee and watch it. Naoya Inoue. He's the one guy for me as a diehard fan that I got to see fight. Now, Alexander Usyk, his style isn't the most exciting, but what he's doing at heavyweight is so special and so rare. I got to watch when he fights. So like when he fought Anthony Joshua, Daniel Dubois, I watched those fights live. And a lot of times, some of those fights were on at an earlier time and stuff. It made it more convenient for me to watch as well. That's definitely part of it. But I got to watch him just because what he's trying to do is historic. If he could beat Tyson Fury next year, we're talking about Alexander Usyk. I'm not exaggerating here. He might be approaching all-time great status, pound for pound all-time great status among the top dozen or so names in the sport. That would be such a significant accomplishment. It'd be huge. Now, I don't want to overstate it. We'll deal with that when it happens. But I'm just saying, because of what he's trying to do, I'm invested and I want to watch. Terrence Crawford's another guy. I just think he's a great, great fighter. I got to watch when he fights. But of all these guys right now, Naoya Inoue, got to watch him fight. I don't care who he fights. He could fight. He can fight me. He can fight one of you guys. I'm going to watch. I don't care. So ESPN Plus is getting my money as a guy. I'm becoming very, very selective about where and when I spend my money, more so than ever in my life. Because again, I have to prioritize that more now than ever. It's not just me I'm thinking about. I'm thinking about college funds for my kids and things like that. That's where my every last cent is going to go. So the little bit of time and a little bit of money I got left over, there's a lot of different people in my life and a lot of different entities and platforms competing for that. Naoya Inoue gets a piece of it because he's a special fighter. And because he's on ESPN Plus, they're getting my money. I hope that makes sense, guys. I think it's relevant to what we discussed on this show today as it pertains to the business of boxing and where we're at and how we can thrive in the current landscape of things. Okay, so we've been going for an hour and a half. I hope you guys enjoyed this. Oh, you know what? I just realized my phone's dropped. That's why we don't have any phone calls. Damn it. I was wondering why we didn't have any phone calls. I'm just checking out my software here, and the call dropped. What the hell happened? I don't know, but damn it. Well, look, it doesn't even tell me why it. Oh, you know what? Some idiot called.
Economic recovery policy.
Yeah. Some telemarketer called, and I think that screwed it up. Yay. Anyway, so I'm sorry, guys. I wanted to take some phone calls, but the calls are down because some telemarketer called and ruined everything. Let me check out a few comments here. Mike Mendiola, who's been upset today. I've seen you in the chat, bro. I know you're not having a good day with the show today because of the subject matter. He says, up and down their roster, PBC pays way more than either Top Rank, Matchroom, or Golden Boy. I'm not talking about mega fights. Why do you think PBC fighters get criticized for inactivity? Well, Mike, look, here's the crux of the matter, bro. I understand why you are a huge supporter of PBC. I know you've done a lot of business. The fighters that you've been with have done a lot of business with them. But you kind of just said two things there in that statement. Okay, there's two ways to look at this. PBC does pay their mid and low-level guys better than those other outfits. You're right, they do. But because they do that, they're very inactive. That's part of the reason why. So you just stated a really good thing for the fighters, but then also a really bad thing for the sport and the fans. So while I'm happy that guys are getting paid, believe me, I'm happy. I would rather see the sport thrive. A rising tide rises all ships, right? So like if the sea level rises, then everyone's boat rises. So if the boxing industry is doing better, if more people are watching, if more people are buying shows, if more people are going to tickets, there is a trickle-down effect that is going to help those mid and low-level guys get more exposure and potentially get more money. But when you minimize everything and push it underground, yeah, this generation of mid-level guys over at PBC is getting paid. Well, the next generation? What about the generation after that? It's going to get smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. Business can't thrive like this, bro. So anyway, I'm just saying, Mike, I understand your position and I agree. I do, but we got to do something different, man. We got to do something different. There has to be a market correction. Aaron Gortman with the super chat. Thank you, Aaron. I appreciate it, brother. He says, have a good holidays, Mike. Love you, man. The next Double M fight is the can't miss event of 2024. Yeah, that's something I'm mulling over with the wife right now. Do I do it again? Because I really wanted to get 3 or 4 fights in this summer. If I do it again, am I going to be able to? Am I going to be able to train with 2 little monsters? And I say monsters with love. Okay. They're just little monsters that poop and pee and cry a lot. Okay. Man, I miss you guys. It was nice to be on today. Again, I'm sorry about the phones. We will, again, I might come on next week after Inoue and after the fight card this Saturday. I might come back on and we might do one more show. But if not, I'll be back early next year. You guys know I ain't going nowhere. Let's see here. I'll do a couple more comments. Komikazi says, Mike, is there a world where boxing becomes obsolete, or do you think it can only get better from here? Salute. Both. Both. In terms of network television, it's already obsolete here in America. It's already obsolete. That's what Rick Glaser was talking about earlier on the show. The network TVs rejected it. I mean, PBC represents over 150 fighters, right? It was very public that their deal with Showtime was ending. Everybody in the industry knew it. It's not like any of the networks stepped up and said, let's sign this stable of fighters. You know, we want this product. And think about this too, guys. Every network right now has their own streaming platform. Every network, right? It's so like all the traditional networks have their version of streaming out there. So they could kind of do a thing like ESPN, ESPN Plus, right? But none of them did. Or if any of them did, they didn't offer the same money that Amazon did, because PBC will always go where the money is. So they went with the Amazon deal. Well, money plus control. So to me, dude, that tells me that it's already obsolete. I hate to say that, but do you think it could get better from here? Believe it or not, it can get worse from here. It can. So I don't know which way it's going to go. I just don't. Trent says, got to get that Chris Mannix fight, Montero. You know what, dude? If they ever did not celebrity boxing, because they already do that, what would this be called? This would be called like media boxing or something like that. Hey, man, I would do it. I think that'd be fun. Like, you know, if Chris wanted, we could do headgear and all that shit if that's what he wanted to do. But like, yeah, I would do it. That'd be fun as hell, man. And he's a big dude. He's my size. So Trent also adds, cable is dead. You are right about that. And that's why, you know, again, hope is not lost, guys. Boxing has always been a trendsetter in a lot of ways of where media is going. I could point out so many histories throughout the history of, so many examples throughout the history of boxing where you saw boxing kind of went where everyone else like followed their lead almost. Like boxing went to premium cable first. Boxing went from like radio to TV for one of the first, and other entities followed. And so boxing got very international first. Look at the NBA now. You know, Major League Baseball, of course, very international. But the NBA now, a lot of the best players in the league are not American anymore. They're from overseas, right? Boxing went global. So like, you know, boxing's going to the apps right now. The other sports are not yet there. That doesn't mean it won't happen at some point. But I definitely think there are huge opportunities, particularly when I look at DAZN, because that's a global platform. They just have to start doing some things better. Israel says only ESPN is left. I know, man. Crazy times. And I think they have like 2 more years on their deal with Top Rank, and then that's done. And are they going to re-up? I don't know. Ace says, last thing, everyone, what's a good price, a good pay-per-view price to pay? I'd say $40. $40. Because here's the thing, guys. If I go watch a fight at a bar, let's say there's a $10 cover and I get 2 beers or like a burger or something and a beer, and that's at least $40. At least. So paying $40 for a pay-per-view and I can watch it at home and stuff, it's not bad. I can justify that, but $80 is tough, man, particularly when it's a fight you didn't ask for. And Ace says, and let's say the pay-per-view is stacked. How about non-stacked? Stacked or non-stacked, bro? Give me $40. This card this weekend, again, none of the fights are great fights, but it's stacked with names and matchups. They're going to get my money. Oh, Sam A says KO of the year, Venezuela over Colbert. Yeah, that whole Chris Colbert thing with Venezuela, that didn't end well for him, huh? That's definitely a KO of the year candidate. I'm trying to think. There's got to be a couple more up there, but you're right, Sam. That might be the best KO of the year. It's pretty brutal, man. He was unconscious and went through the ropes pretty much. So you're probably right about that. It probably is the KO of the year. King KO says it's going to get worse for PBC. Amazon will have a short leash on them. Hey, look, in theory, if Amazon has a short leash on them, maybe that forces them to level up. Again, I go back to Steven Espinoza. His job was to serve his network and to serve the subscribers of the network. And he should have pushed back. Fights like Benavidez Plant should have happened years ago when they both had world titles. It could have been a unification fight. Benavidez could have already had his Canelo fight by now. Think about it. If he had a world title, Canelo would have to fight him to get undisputed. So they just made so many errors over there. And when they finally do a fight like Crawford Spence, they act like, hey, everyone, drop on your knees and blow me. I gave you the big fight you all wanted. And it's like, you didn't do any of us a favor, dude. You did your job. And you did it 5 years too late after years of pretending that, you know, we don't recognize the WBO. We don't want to work with Bob Arum. Terrence Crawford doesn't have a big enough name. He's not a pay-per-view star. Like, all of that was bullshit. They delayed the fight because they knew what they had. They knew Crawford was levels above Spence and he was going to beat him. And you allowed them to do that. And you attacked anybody who questioned it or criticized it. So yeah, good riddance. Good riddance. Hamed says, Ace, about $20 in the UK, in America, $40, or I'm sorry, not 20 pounds, and $40 in America. Yeah, I think that's fair. I think that's fair. Rock Loggins with the super chat. Thank you so much, brother. He says, Mike, I'm in Michigan visiting family for the holidays. Nice. Happy holidays for you and your family. Same to you as well, my man. Losing my voice. Same to you as well. What part of Michigan? You know where I'm from. I hope you have fun, man. I hope it's not too cold up there. But you know what? I hope you see a little bit of snow. You get a little bit of that around the holidays. It always makes it nicer. Mindiola says, I'm going to close with this, brother Mike. Do you think Otani refused the $700 deal because he was afraid it would hurt the sport long term? Boxing will survive. Trust me. I like that example. Okay, Mike. Otani gets signed by the Dodgers for $700 million. It's a record-breaking deal. But the numbers are there. The Dodgers are going to make over $1 billion working with Otani. Los Angeles has proximity to Tokyo. They do a lot of business in the Asian markets, more so than any big city in America. The infrastructure's there. That was a steal, $700 million. They're going to do $1.2 billion of business over Otani's time with the team. So they're going to make all that money back. The viewership is there. People watch baseball. Networks put up billions of dollars to cover and broadcast baseball. It's everywhere. It's also international, and Otani's a massive star back home. So the global market is there for that particular signing. There is no fighter in boxing other than Canelo Alvarez, who's on his way out, and Ryan Garcia, who's going to be a flash in the pan type. He's just not on that level, that can command that type of investment right now. And don't tell me Gervonta Davis, because he hasn't proven yet that he's a pay-per-view guy on his own. Canelo can fight anybody, and he still does over 500,000 buys. He just fought Jermell Charlo. Jermell Charlo had one other pay-per-view. 3 people bought it, right? And it was PBC's best pay-per-view of their entire run. in terms of the most competitive matchups and the most stacked card. 3 people bought it. So Canelo could fight anybody and do those numbers. Otani, it makes sense why they paid that money. So I get what you're saying, dude. And I agree with you. Boxing will survive, but I want boxing to thrive. I don't want it to survive. I want it to thrive. And everyone always points to the dollars. Look at the gate we did for this fight. Look at the pay-per-view revenue. Okay, that's a one-off. What's your viewership? That's the number we should be talking about. What is the viewership? What is the subscribership on these apps? Those are the numbers that we as fans should be concerned about, not the purses. All right. Mendiola adds, boxers deserve to get paid. 99% of them retire broke and with brain damage. That's my number one concern for the fighters I work with. I hear you, bro. I hear you. And one thing, again, another thing PBC does very, very well, I think they do some good financial consulting and counseling with their fighters. There are a lot of PBC guys who have invested in real estate. They've invested in businesses. They've done well with their money. I applaud that. I think PBC does a good job with that. I really, really do. So I like that they take care of the fighters, but if you pay a guy, let's say $3 million to fight once a year, what's the difference between that and paying him $1.5 million to fight twice a year? He's still making the same amount of money. He's going to be in the gym regardless, or at least he should if he's a professional athlete. Pay him $3 million to fight twice a year instead of $3 million to fight once a year. That way the network will be willing to put up the money and pay for it to where it's economically viable for everybody. And that guy gets in the ring twice a year and more people see him. And further on down the line, if he's got more people that know him, then when he goes to pay-per-view, he could do more numbers. We got to change this, brother. We got to change it. Ahmed says, Mike, are the 2 Canelo fights on Showtime pay-per-view? They'll be Amazon pay-per-view. His 2 remaining fights, not Showtime. They'll be on Amazon. Unless there's some news item that I missed. Oh, Rock is in Kalamazoo. Dude, that's awesome, man. Go to the sand dunes and check all that out. This time of year, it'll be beautiful. There won't be too many people there. If you haven't checked all that out yet, you should, man. That's a really cool area. Frito Fistra says, off topic. Hi, Mike. In the summer, I was walking in Madrid, saw a person with a Montero unboxing t-shirt. I went to say hi to him and we shook hands. It made my day. Wow. You just made my day. Wow. That's pretty cool, man. That's really pretty cool. I've sold MOB tees all over the world, and it's just cool that you guys out there enjoy my show and what I do. And I know we don't agree on everything, and sometimes I rant about stuff, and that's pretty cool, man. That's really, really awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Because man, I've seen some posts on social media of people in different countries, and I've even seen some boxing promos for certain fights where they did like a scan of the crowd during the weigh-in, and I've seen MOB shirts, like just like a fan wearing an MOB shirt like at a weigh-in in Vegas, and I've seen stuff like that. It's really freaking cool, man. Sam A with a super chat. Thank you so much, brother. He says, Boo Boo ducked everyone. Why fight that killer? To get paid. I think he realized he was completely out of options, and I think they overpaid him, and it was a way for him to get paid. He moved up in weight. He can say, hey, this guy was too big for me. He can go back down to 160 now and save face. Boo Boo he's gotten very well paid, but man, that guy made some poor decisions. Let's see. I think we're done, guys. Joshua Herrera says, off topic, Mike, go check out Godzilla -1. Great movie. Hey, if I can get away for a couple hours, I'll try, but it's probably going to be a while because of this baby. I would like right now, like the thought of like going to a movie and just chilling sounds amazing. I'd love to do that. Probably ain't going to happen until early next year. All right, guys. enjoy your holidays, whatever you celebrate. We celebrate Christmas in my house, so Merry Christmas to those of you who celebrate Christmas. Happy New Year. I appreciate all of you. I'm thankful for you. I feel a tremendous sense of gratitude for your support. And as soon as I can get my life back on schedule, we'll be doing a more regular show. Okay, so thank you for sticking with me during this newborn time. Newborn phase is tough, dude. But Josephine turned 7 weeks old today. By the time we get her to about 12 weeks, things should start getting a little better. All right, guys. Enjoy your holidays, your New Year's, and we'll talk soon. Love you guys. See you at the fights. Peace.